Let's get started. So the past couple of weeks, we have basically built the foundation, went through all the steps, how you create a package and how you use Gig and GitHub. And so you can use the analogy, right? You're trying to build a house. Now we have the foundation. So the next step we will to have some materials, how you construct your bedroom, your living room, right? So you need the gradient. And this is what this week and possibly next week is about, is to have all the gradients. So we're going to talk about all the Python basics, the syntax, the data types, looping, functions, classes, modules. So those are the things that we need in order to build a package. So for the next week or two, we are going to have a very condensed introduction into the Python language. Okay, so make sure that you practice, because this is very important. Without those skills, you won't be able to build. Okay, so these 2 weeks are going to teach you what kind of things do you need and how do you understand the Python syntax, so that you can later add functionality into your package. So essentially, it's teaching you how to pick the materials you need for building your house. Okay, and if you look at the schedule, so right now it's week number 6. We're kind of in here. So these 2 weeks, and hopefully we don't need the whole 2 weeks. We have a lot of materials to cover. So you need to make sure you review the content and practice. Don't just attend and just listen. It won't work. Okay, until you really program, especially if you're beginners, if you're Python beginners, you make sure you practice. When you practice, you will understand much better. So, and I have prepared all the materials. So if you go to the resources, and then we are going to use the package GEOSDemo. Right now, I'm just providing you the notebooks. It doesn't really have any functionality, but I just want to let you know where you can get those materials. So if you click the link here, GEOSDemo, and it takes you to the website. So you can either clone the repo. I'm going to show you how to clone the repo. And so all the materials are under the docs directory. And if you get in there, there's a Python's directory. So we're going to quickly go through some of those. These materials is actually the content for one semester for 325. Maybe not the whole semester, but it's at least more than half of the semester for 312. First step in programming. But in this course, you need to know that. So we are going to spend a week, less than 2 weeks, to cover the content that we cover in a low level course. So it's going to be a fire sale, right? You're just going to get into that and then quickly grasp the concept. If you already know the basics, perfect. You can review the concept and then redo it. But if you're new, make sure you spend some time. So because I provide the notebook that you can practice. Okay. So next, I'm going to show you here where you can also run it interactively using Google Colab. So if you click the link upper right corner here, I already provide the links. Okay. So if you open the website, this is essentially the final Python package is going to host it. Okay. But for now, I'm providing also notebook examples. So if you click at the lower left corner here, Python basics, you're going to have all the stuff in here. So if I click variables, data types, right? So you're going to have the text, the source code, and also the output. So everything is executed. You're welcome to read through. But today I want to go through all the source code. So just to teach you the basics about Python. And if you want to like practice it, just click the open in Colab. It should take you to Colab. And then you can just run that from there, right? I can just here, I can click run and then run anyway. You will be able to go through each code block just to practice, okay? But I'm going to use my local computer using Visual Studio Code, because that's better when you, right now it's not a whole lot of computation, so it's fine to run that on our local computer. So I just make sure that you know how to get access to all the contents. So again, there are roughly 10 Jupyter notebooks in here, and hopefully each week we're going to cover at least half, and then we will use the next week to cover the other half. Then you should have a pretty good understanding about Python. I know some of you have some other languages, but there's some syntax differences. So make sure you understand the basics. these are the foundation, the materials, the gradients you need to do programming. So make sure you practice. And we're going to have a lab assignment for you to do that. We're going to have a lot of assignments in these 2 labs so that you can master all the basics about Python. Questions? Okay, so next, let's start doing coding. So I'm going to clone this repository to my computer. So all I need to just simply maybe click this one and then just copy. Then I would like to maybe open the terminal. Okay, right click. You can use Windows terminal or Mac terminal, whatever you like. Then, how do we clone a repository? Git clone, right? You need to do this many times. It should be very intuitive. Okay, hit enter. It's cloned the entire repo to our computer. Okay, so now it's under my downloads directory. I have them all here. Double click, get into the directory, and then just right click, show more, open in Visual Studio Code. So we're going to use Visual Studio Code. You're welcome to use Jupyter Lab, Jupyter Notebook, but since right now Visual Studio Code has not full support, but pretty decent support for Jupyter Notebook, so we can actually run things directly within here, right? So once I open, now we have this one. So all the notebooks are under the docs directory, okay? And then Python. So here we have 10 notebooks. I'm going to click the first one. This one doesn't really have anything yet, just a couple shortcuts that we're going to use. Shift enter, Control enter, Alt enter, and tab for auto completion. Shift tab for the function arguments. Again, this couple parameters, the keyboard shortcuts, make sure that you really remember that. And so most of the content is coming from this book here, Python Crash Course, the 3rd edition. So you're welcome if you want to buy a hard copy, but for programming, you don't really need to read hard copy books. It's better to practice and modify the code and see the outputs and make changes and see the output again. So it's more about practicing, less than about reading. Okay. Next, let's look at the second one, variable data types. Okay, once it's open, take a look at in here. So I assume that you have already set up all the Python and Jupyter Notebook, the extensions in Visual Studio Code. So now we can start running. But whenever you open a notebook inside Visual Studio Code, make sure that you upper right corner here, there's a option, a button here, select kernel. Okay, so you have to remember, Python is an interpreted language. So whenever you're trying to run something, you need to specify what's the interpreter. So but in the Jupyter Lab, it's also called kernel. You can think about kernel just like a container. You're running the code within this container. So you need to specify where you want to run. So we have previously introduced using Conda, right? We create a couple environments. So this is essentially you need to specify which Conda environment you're running, because on your computer, you might have multiple. So select kernel. If you click, it should pop up a list of all the kernels, right? So the base environment, usually don't use the base environment. Don't mess up the stuff. Otherwise, if it's broken, then your computer is messed up. You might need to reinstall. So you should select the one that you use for this course. So we have created the environment GOS. So I'm just going to select this one. You use whatever name that you chose for your environment. So I'm going to select this one. And once you select, now we are connecting to this kernel. So we should be ready to run. If you scroll down the notebook, right, it's a pretty long notebook. You are welcome to spend the time to read the text after class. But for today, we're just going to go through all the, basically run through the code blocks, and so that you can have a hands-on experiences about like how you run the code, how you make changes, how you modify. Okay. And also I would like to point out here there's a so-called outline. So basically all the notebooks have headings, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, right? So because it's a long document, this is basically a table content. So if you click the outline on the left side here, you should see this outline here. So if I scroll down here, can you see this on the left side? Yes. So this shows you the outline. So if I need to like navigate to other sections, I can quickly do that. For example, go to numbers. It's going to go here. All right. So this is pretty nice. You can do the same thing in Jupyter Lab if you open Jupyter Lab, but I also like Jupyter Visual Studio Code right now can also do that. Okay, so make sure you use some of these tools that might help improve your productivity. Especially good for long documents. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the previous one and let me uncap this here. So for this notebook, we're going to go through variables and data types. So this is pretty much common to all the programming languages. Any codes that you write is most likely functions, variables, data type, objects. So in Python, this is called dynamic data type. So it's assigned dynamically. Unlike other programming languages, in the old days, for example, C, C++, you will have to define what data type it is, right? So right now, if I just write a simple number, like 1, what do you think the data type is? Right? It can be number, it can be string, it can be a lot of data types. So Python is going to figure out, depends on the thing, it's going to figure out intentionally what data type it should be. But it's not always the case. Sometimes if you want to be very precise, you can specify what data type you want. The reason for this is because everything that you are doing here is going to take up some memory in your computer. So it depends on how big is the object. Sometimes it can be small, sometimes it can be large. If you want very precise, you probably want to have a large chunk of RAM actually to represent a floating number or double data type. So, and this is what this one is about. So in Python, you don't really have to worry about what data type it is. Python will figure out that for you. But when you're trying to create a variable, in your mind, you need to know that, oh, is this a number? Is this a string? Something like that. So look at the first code block here. All right, we just define. So the name, Python, when it's executing the code, think about here. Is it executing from the right to the left or from the left to the right? So look at the first line here. When you are executing this line, how is actually Python understand this code, this line of code? Say it again. From the left to the right, right? This is just like human when you are reading from the left to right. So a message is equal to something, just like doing mathematical equation, x equal to 1, y equal to 2, and then g equal to x plus y. So this is how we read, I mean, as a human. I mean, computer is not, okay? Computer are not reading from message equal to blah, blah, blah. Computer read from the right to the left. So in Python, it's reading from the right to the left. So it's reading from the equal sign to the right and then back to the left. So if there is something wrong on the right, on your left side, it's not executed. So think about here, we're trying to assign this string to this variable. Python read this one first. Okay, and then try to assign to a variable. So again, if this one fails, your program fails. Okay, and so this is a simple variable defining a string. So in Python, a string can be quoted by a single quote or double quote. Okay, they're the same. There's no difference. But here, let's just execute this one just to see what it looks like, right? So it's going to print out the text. Also in Jupyter Notebook, one nice thing about this, you don't really have to write a print function. Anytime when you print a variable, it's automatically going to get all the content. So this is essentially the same like this. I'm going to copy this one. And then even if I remove the print function, keep in mind, they're the same, okay? So you don't have, in Jupyter Notebook, you don't have to use the print function, okay? You can just print out, just type the variable name, execute, it's going to print out the content, right? So we're going to see more of this when we're creating maps later, right? You just type M, it's going to display the map. You don't have to like print map, okay? So this is how to define the variables. And again, you are welcome to change that. So variable names need to be unique. If you previously define a name with the message and then you assign a new content to it, it's going to overwrite. Okay, so if I execute this one, it's going to be overwrite. Let me see if I can show you. Anyway, I'll check this one. So again, make sure that you don't accidentally overwrite the content. Sometimes otherwise you won't be able to do that. Also, how about this one here? Right? In Visual Studio Code here, basically execute this one. So if you define the variable name and if you're trying to print out, make sure they don't have typos. If you see anything like curly lines beneath something, most likely there's potential error something in here. So now this kind of IDE makes your life much easier, because in the old days when I started learning programming language when I was an undergraduate, it was tough. It's using C, right? You need to write everything from the command line, and then there's no like these tools to help you. There's all kind of typo you need to debugging. Sometimes it takes a while, but now it's much easier. So anything you're trying to print, it must exist in the memory. The reason that we're trying to do this, it doesn't work because this variable doesn't exist in the memory. Okay, something needs to exist before you can use that. Okay, so again, make sure you fix all the typos. If I change this one, then now if you run again, it should work. Okay, so strings can be by single quotes, by double quotes, either way is fine. And also here I can simply just type, can I just type hello world here? Can I run this line of code? No. Yes? No good, right? You still mean so many curly lines beneath. It's not working, right? Because if you're using a code block, you need to have the variable need to exist. So how do you fix this one? To be able to run this code block, how do you fix it? Simple, right? You just put a single quote, double quotes, right? You have single quotes begin, and then you have a single quotes at the end. Now it becomes a string. Okay, so technically you don't have to assign this one to a variable. You can just put single quote, double quotes and execute. You will treat that one as a variable. But the point is that you don't care about what the variable name. You just want to print out text. That's fine. It's essentially like print and then parentheses and then single quote, double quote, and then have the content. That's like that. Okay. Next, let's talk about the functions. Okay, so in Python, Python is an object-oriented language. Okay, so everything in Python is probably an object. Okay, so you can do a bunch of things to an object. Okay, so just like think about here, each individual view is an object. Okay, so an object usually can have two things: attributes and methods. Or sometimes called attributes like actions or properties. Okay, so it can be attributes or sometimes called properties. Action means you can do something, right? So for me, for example, as an individual, to represent me in a Python language, okay, I can assign myself to a variable, and then from that variable I can get, for example, my height, my weight, okay, my department, my job title, something like that. That's called an attribute. Second one is called action methods. That means you can do something, you can take actions. So for example, I can walk, I can speak, I can teach, I can run. So those are the actions. So if you master this, then you know like, oh, Python is an object. So you're going to be able to do all kinds of things to the objects. So you're going to execute code based on things coming from the object. So how about this, right? So we create this text and assign it to a variable. Now we can run this one called doc title. So what does that mean? You're going to change this one to a title case. Okay, so let me do it here. Name dot. Okay, so once you type dot, Visual Studio Code is pretty intelligent. So this is called IntelliSense. So that means it will know that what kind of things you have, right? So whenever you create something in the memory, Python will know based on the data type. It will know what kind of things you can do, what kind of things you have. Okay. Understand? So when you just type tab dot and then it's autocomplete. If you're using in Jupyter Lab, you will need to hit tab to show the list. But in Visual Studio Code, it's automatic, so it's better. And you can scroll down here. Not a whole lot of functions, maybe 20 something, right? So you can think about here, right? How about this capitalize, right? You probably can just from the name you can recognize how you can capitalize. So all you need, most of the time, if it is an attribute, you don't need a parentheses. If it is a function or a method, then you need to complete with a parenthesis. So for example, right now, if I run this one, what do you expect to see? Can you see something? You're just going to tell, okay, this is the function, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't actually show you the result. So if you really want, you need to have the parentheses in order to execute. So now you see this is capitalized. So basically capitalize just the first character. Right? And I can do the same thing. I can have, for example, title case. It's going to title case all the text. So you need to keep in mind, this looks pretty simple. I mean, I can do it manually. Okay, that's not the point about programming. Think about you need to do thousands, tens of thousands of this, right? So assume that I download your name from Canvas. I'm trying to change the name from lowercase to title case or to all uppercase. I'm not going to like loop through and then do it manually. Programming can help you. It doesn't matter how many you have, 1,000, 10,000, a million, just one line of code, or maybe do a looping, 2 lines of code, done. Okay, so this is how efficient it is if you know how to do things quickly. Okay, so uppercase, for example, lowercase, right? Pretty simple. So this is how you can change, manipulate the text, right? And next one, this is also very useful. F, this one is called F string. So F string, in the past, in the previous Python version, you call format, but this one is better. So F string means you can use a variable name as a placeholder. And when you're executing like line of code, it's going to replace the placeholder with the real content. So think about here, I'm having the first name and the last name. I can join the full name, so I don't need to repeatedly hard code the full name. Because if I know the first name, I know the last name, I know your full name, right? Do I need to like really hard code your first name and last name again? No, you don't have to. So in Python, you should reduce the lines of code that you need to change if later you wanted to change to something else, right? So if you're just getting the first name, last name, right now I want to print out the full name, you can use something like this. So F means it's going to the F string, and then it's going to be have single quote, double quotes in there. Within there, anything within the curly brackets, you can put a variable name in there. It's going to replace the content. So let's execute this one, right? See here. And within the curly brackets, you can actually, it doesn't have to be a variable name. It can be anything that Python support. You can run a function in there. You can run a method. So here, I can, for example, I know if you give me your first name and last name all in lowercase, I can print out your full name in title case. So what do you think, what should we be changing here? How do we change the name to title case? Using this same 4 lines of code. Only change 1 line. Right? How many solutions do we have? I want to print out the title case of this name. Right? Think about it. Anyone?
The like full name dot title.
Exactly. This one solution, I can do it here. I can just title here, title, right? Parentheses. Done. Awesome, right? Simple as that. Is there any other solution? Can I change this line?
Yeah.
Right? Same thing. This is like a little bit more work, but the point I wanted to say is that within the curly brackets, it not only for the variable name, it can be anything. You can run pretty much anything. So I can just run this one. I can do the same thing, title here, and similarly, dot title, parentheses, execute. You're gonna get the same result. So this is very powerful. So the F string is very powerful. So we can quote by double quotes, or we can have single quotes. So I can have single quote here, but you also need to have a single quote at the end. So in Python, the quotes need to be paired. You cannot mix them. So we have more examples later showing how you can mix them, but it's a little bit complicated. Okay, and let's do a little bit more, right? We can have the first name, last name, and then hello, blah blah, somebody the title, and then print out, right? So the F string is very, very powerful. So here you can write text and then just simply replace this with the placeholder. So curly brackets within there, put whatever you want. As long as it's a very Python variable or function or method or anything, you will be able to see that from here, right? And this is the old way. The format is the same thing. So you have got the curly brackets, and then you run the format function, and it's going to be in sequence. So here I have 2 curly brackets. Within the format, you're going to have 2 parameters. And the first one here is going to replace with the first name. The second one is going to replace with the last name, and then I print out. So this is how you can use. I would not recommend using this, but you might, when you go online, look at the source code. Sometimes you might see this one, but I recommend that you go with this way. Okay. And this is how you just assign simple variable and then do something to a string. Next one, a little more about the formatting of the string. So sometimes if you're trying to print out something in the Python world, it's going to just print out a simple text. But if you need to indent, if you need to add something special characters to that, Python also have things to do that. So here, look at this tone. If I just print out Python, it's like this. And if I have the escape sign and then T, and then just type Python, it's going to run this one. So what does T mean here? Tab, right? Can I have 2 tabs in here? How do I print out? How do I indent one more level? Backslash T, right? Right? And then backslash T. So this is something that you need to care for, okay? We'll talk about when we're trying to deal with files, because on Windows operating system, the file path is using the backslash. So it's going to cause trouble actually for programming. And so let me show you here just a simple trick. Okay, assume like I'm right now under my downloads folder. I'm going to create a new folder here called temp. Okay, and I'm going to copy this file path. So take a look. I'm going to copy. Okay, and then I come back to here. I can create a new one. I can define a variable. For example, let's say file path equal to, okay, single quotes, Control V. Okay, and I'm going to print out the file path. Oh, I have a typo here. PATH file path. What do you think? When I print out, what are you going to see? If I execute this line, how many lines are you going to see? Is it a file path? Right? Look at it closely. If you are curious, let me run this one. Oh, it doesn't even allow you to run that. Okay. So the reason for that, because whenever Python see the escape sign, backslash and T, is being treated as a tab. So, and this is going to cause trouble because it just cannot decode it. Okay. So if you really need the backslash T be treated as a string, you can put an R at the beginning. See? Yeah, put an R at the beginning. Then it's going to treat that one as it is. So R means raw. Okay, we'll talk about more later. But right now, just let you know, sometimes things can be tricky. Anytime when your text contains an escape sign, be careful. Escape T, escape N is going to cause trouble for the call. Okay, so similarly, if you have something like N in here, N means like new line. So if I have this one, I remove this, you're probably going to get the same error because backslash N is actually new line. You go to the next line. So don't try to do this. It's going to cause trouble down the road. And just like in here, right? So I print out languages, and then here Python, C, JavaScript, right? So you can have one line But actually within there, you can have some special characters to indicate that you want to do multiple lines. So take a look at this one. Right now, it's printing out this in like this. So how do I indent Python, C, and JavaScript into the next level using this? How do I modify this? I want the language, and then these 3 languages indented to the right. Can we change this line to indent the text? Yes? No? Can we? Anyone? Alright, should not be too difficult, right? So you already go to the next line. You just add \t, 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 and then you enter. Like look, right? So this is how you can do all kind of formatting. Make sure that you understand practice. You can have \n, \t. Those are the most 2 common ones, but there are other special characters. So don't. If you are using choosing a variable name or a file path name on your computer, don't try to, especially on Windows, don't try to start a folder name with T and N, because later when you're trying to open a file, you're going to have run into these kind of issues. You can resolve the issue, but just make sure that you understand why it's causing troubles. Okay, so next one here, these 2 are also might be useful. R strip or L strip or the strip. So those are basically trying to remove the space. So if you have a text, you have a bunch of space at the beginning and have some spaces at the end. The function strip can help you remove all the extra white spaces from the beginning or from the end, or you can also remove all of them in between. Okay, so if you really want to. So how about this? So if I run this one, you see here, it removes the beginning, it removes also the end. So R means remove text at the beginning. On the right, the real end, on the left or the right. Okay. So let me show you another example. How about this? Okay, I'm going to copy this line of code, this line of text, and I'm going to assign this one as a variable. So I can say text equal to single quotes. Okay, so I'm going to copy this one, and now let me give you a task. I want to remove all the spaces within this text. Right? How should we do that? What do you think? Should I manually just go there to remove? Right? Like this? Like this? After no coding, okay, don't do that, okay? That's like, for people don't know how to do coding. Because think about, you can have this like couple, one sentence, you can have like one paragraph, you go over the whole book if you need to do that, okay? And so all you need, text, you can strip, there should be a function called replace, okay? Pretty simple. And then parentheses, it's pretty intelligent. I don't even need to do that. So you see, single quotes and then a space and then another, oops, hit tab and run, take a look, done, right? So what we are doing here essentially, this one here is a single quote and then a space inside. So you're going to replace the space with empty. So we are removing all the spaces. So now maybe another example, how do I replace the space with a comma, for example? I want to add a comma to everywhere, right? Or maybe a hyphen in between each word. Can I do that? Right? So imagine, right? Earlier we removed it, replaced with empty. Now we just replace with hyphen, right? Replace with comma, right? Easy, right? So this is how you can replace text within the content. And next one, the strings is sometimes you have a variable in there, you have a single quote with a double quote in there. Make sure that you pair them. Otherwise, you're going to run into error. So in this case, right, if I run this one, everything works fine. We have a single quote in there, but please don't, if you already have a single quote in there, you need to use a double quote at the beginning and the end. So if you have a single quote in here, and then another single quote at the end, it's not going to work, okay? So anytime you see this signs, not good, okay? Your code doesn't work, okay? So, oops. Single quotes in here. So one thing you can do, you can use the escape sign here. Take a look. So if you really want to have a single quote at the beginning and end, and also have single quote in between, you need to have the escape sign. So escape sign basically tells Python to treat this one as it is. Otherwise, when Python is interpreting this line of code, it's going to find the one at the beginning, and then it's going to search the next one. So the next one is here. I'm done. I'm finished. You cannot give me another one because I already defined a pair, and it doesn't go towards to the end. So these things are going to cause trouble. But if you want to just like have a text with a single quote inside, you can do it this way. Oops. Or because I have the other one at the end. So if I remove this one, then now it should work just fine, right? But you can also have like double quotes if you want to have, but it's better that if you have single quotes in your text, have double quotes outside. If you have double quotes in your text, have single quotes outside. So in that way, it doesn't confuse Python. But if you really want to have both, use the escape sign. This is where you can do that. So for example, here I can have the single double quotes at the beginning, and I also have a double quotes at the end. Inside here, I can also have another double quotes. Again, if once you have double quotes, it doesn't work, then you need the escape sign, then it should work. Okay. So this is something that most of the programming languages, you're going to have something like this. So the escape sign is a special character. How about this? How do I have a backslash in the text? Can we? Right? Can we just like this? Will that work? Oh, now it's pretty intelligent. So actually work. How do I have a double backslash? Oh, what happened? I have two double slashes. Why only print me one? How do I have two double slashes? Print it out. What do you think? Now you print out only one, right? But I have two in here. What happened? Can I add another one? Oh, now it's 3 thanks to 2, right? If it is 1, it is 1. If it is 2, it is also 1. If I have 3, then it is 2. Okay, funny. That's not what it's supposed to be. So it's the same thing, just like what we said earlier. The escape sign is special character. And so when you're trying to have another special backslash in here, you need to backslash. So you're going to treat that backslash as what it is. So you have 3 backslashes. The first one is going to be just tell Python, okay, I'm going to, whatever comes after is going to be treated as special characters. So that's why you only have 2. And this is what sometimes might comes up, and make sure that you understand the logic, okay? And next, about integers and numbers. So these are pretty easy and straightforward. So Python, you can just use it as a calculator. So you can do all kind of calculations. You can also assign it to the variable, right? So I can say x equal to 2 plus 3. It should work just fine. And then I can print out x, for example, right? So this is how you assign a variable. So Python have integer, also have so-called floating number. So this is called float. Float means you're going to have something like this, have a decimal, okay? So if you run this, you're going to have like 0.2, right? How about this? Like 2 multiplied by 0.1, right? So you need to think about here what Python is actually understanding this one. So when you are trying to do operations on 2 different data types, it's going to convert one to the other. So here, 2, without looking at like multiply by 0.1. What's the data type of 2 in Python? Integer, right? And 0.1 is a float. So when you're trying to multiply integer and float, it's going to convert the integer to float, and then float multiplied by float and become a floating number. Okay, so this is how it actually works. And can I 2 multiply by a string? What does this mean? What do you think? If I print out this one, can you see something? In your mind, what do you think the output will be? 2 multiplied by like single quotes, 50? What do you think Python would do in this case? Are you going to get 100? What is that? 50, 50. So what does this mean? So Python, you don't figure out the intention, the way that you want to do something. So because it's a string, it's not a number. So you cannot multiply a number and a string. So what it's going to do is going to convert the number to string and then print out the string twice. So you multiply the string, basically you want to do it multiple times. If you really want to do that, like I can convert the string to number. So you be just int. Int is a data type and it also is a function. So I can just do int and then remove this one. Take a look. What do you think about this one? What's the output? Right, 100. So you can convert a string to number, and then number you can multiply by a number. This is kind of like if you're using Excel, right? Sometimes you are dealing with data, you might have a column of text. It looks like number, but it's actually text. So sometimes you have to do the conversion. It looks like text, is actually number. It looks like number, is actually text. So you have to be very specific. Python is going to figure out what's the base for that case, but it might not be always accurate. Sometimes you have to explicitly saying that, okay, I want to convert this one to a number and then do the number. I want to convert this one to a string and then you do an operation on top of the string. Okay, so you can do both. You can do minus, you can do plus, multiply. So those are pretty simple. You can practice that. Next one, underscore. This is only useful if you're dealing with large numbers. So Python doesn't understand the comma, so don't try to have a comma in numbers. It's not going to work. Okay, so they say 1000. Don't try to do this like a equal to 1000. Yeah, it might work. So let me see. Oh, interesting. Oh no, what is this? It's being treated as a tuple. Okay, we will talk about that later. But for you probably assume that, okay, this is the number 1000. It's going to assign 1000 to this variable. It's not, okay? When you have a comma, it basically separate. Basically, you have two components. And then it's assigned the tuple, basically, is a list of elements. So if you really want to have numbers, don't do this, okay? Just remove all the commas. Then you should have this one as expected, 1000. Otherwise, you need to have an underscore. It's fine as well, okay? So remove the comma with underscore. Otherwise, you're not going to get the result what you expect. So this is something very tricky. Make sure you understand that. And multiple assignment. This is kind of similar to what we did earlier, right? So this is essentially the same as this one. X equal to 0, Y equal to 1, and then X equal to, for example, whatever. So you can do that multiple times, or you can just assign them on the same line. So comma and comma, comma, and make sure that you pair. So the same number of items on the right and the same number of items on the left. Okay. If you remove this one, I'm not sure if it works or not. It might be, but it probably is not something what you expect. Yeah, too many variables to unpack. So if you have 3 variables on the right, numbers on the right, you need to have 3 variables on the left. And the other thing I want to point out is when you assign a variable and you have an equal sign, make sure you have a space in between, okay? It's the good practice. You don't necessarily have to have the space. I can do it like this. Okay, but it doesn't look good, okay? So whenever you assign a variable or something, try to have a space, so to make it more readable. Otherwise it becomes too narrow. So always have a space in between. When you're assigning something to a variable, have a space in between. And lastly, it's about a comment. So comment basically is just like something doesn't execute. It's just a description of things, just like text. It's not part of the source code. It's just description, documentation or something like that. So in the Visual Studio Code or in Jupyter Notebook, the shortcut is, anyone knows? Control/, okay? Control/. So when something turns green, that means it becomes a comment. A comment basically you comment it out, okay? It's not the code anymore. So if I run this one, it's what. But you need to be careful. Don't try to comment out the comment, okay? If I comment out this one, it doesn't work, okay? The first line is supposed to be a comment. It's not available. It's nothing Python. It's not valid Python code. So if I try to run this one, it won't work, okay? So make sure that it's good to have comments. Or if it, within a Jupyter Notebook, I can actually run text like above. But if it's just pure Python script, sometimes you need to have comments just to tell other people like what your code is doing. I can guarantee you, when you become better and better, you're going to write very long Python scripts. And sometimes you're doing on something, you write long script and then come back after a couple months, you have no idea what you're doing. You could not understand your code. It happens. So it's good to have documentation, have text, have comments in there, just to describe what this one code block is doing, so that other people can understand that. Otherwise, you can have like pages. Just like you're writing a mathematical equation, like very complicated, and you can work on something and then like have pages equation, and then a couple months later come back. Oh, what does that mean for each one? You have no idea. Okay, so good to have text, have comments. All right, so that's pretty much all about variables and data types. So in Python, again, just to recap, it's an object-oriented language. Okay, so anything that you need to use in Python programming language, you need to define a variable, a function, an object, or something, and then you want to allocate something in your memory. Okay, so now we are just using the built-in. It's pretty small, but you can think about, you can read a large amount of data from your computer. For example, you have an Excel file, you have a shape file, something. Python can also read. We talk about more later in this course how you can actually read those files and then plot that on the map. For now, just get the basics: how you define a variable, how you define text, numbers, floating, and how do you apply some functions or methods on top of the object. So for example, string, I can remove the space, I can change the title case, uppercase, whatever, right? There are a bunch of things you can do. So just play with that and make sure you understand how we're going to do that. Okay, and questions? If you already know the any programming language, this is pretty basic, but just some minor differences between the languages. R, Python, C++, the syntax might be different, but in terms of the concepts, they are the same. Okay, so next let's move into list. Okay, so this is more like a composite data type, and this one is super important. So most of the time you are dealing with Python, you want to deal with a list. Because this is essentially how you can do things repeatedly just within one line of code. So I'm going to show you how you can use this. We also, for example, you want to create a map. For example, you want to create a map for each state in the US. You're not going to define 50 variables, right? You just define one variable and then do the looping. Couple lines code, you can get your things done. So this is going to help you a whole lot. It's basically the point of using programming is to help you automate. In order to automate, you are repeating doing stuff, then you use a list or something to automate. So here, a list in Python is defined, encoded as square brackets. So anything within the square brackets is a list. So here, for example, this is number, this is a string, and this is a list. So we run this, the function called type. Oh, I need to select a kernel again. Okay, GOS. If I run this one, so the type is a function. TYP is going to tell you what kind of data type it is, and as you can see, the last one here, list. So list is essentially a collection of items or a collection of elements. In here, I can put you guys your names in a list, and then I can loop through the list. I can extract the first name, I can extract the last name, I can extract your major, whatever, depends on what information available in there. So here, right, a list, and a list, the items inside the list doesn't have to be the same data type. So you can have mix, I can have a text, I can have numbers, I can have a list of lists. So here, right now, this one is pretty simple. It's all text, right? But I can certainly change this one here. I can have 4, for example, right? Will it work? It doesn't matter. You can have mixed data type. You can have anything in there. Python doesn't care. It's going to figure out what's in there. Okay. So in terms of indexing, this is very important. If you're using other programming languages, I think the indexing start from like 1, right? Yes. In Python, it's starting from 0. Anything start. If you need to get the first item, the index will be 0. Okay. So think about here. This is the name of the variable. So if you're trying to index an element in the list, you're going to have the square brackets and then have the index number in there. So earlier we defined these bicycles. We have these 4 different brands of bicycles in there. So now we're indexing square brackets, and then 0 is going to get the first one. So here, let's look at this list again. How do I get the red line? How do I get this element? What would be the index? Anyone? What's the index of this one? Based on this list? 2, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. So you can do like 2. You're gonna get this one. Can you do the other way? -2. Good point. Okay. What does this mean? -2, we're going to count from the backwards. Okay. So if you have a long list, if it like at the beginning, like 1, 0, 1, 2, but assume that you have a list of like 20 people, it's difficult to count. You can, if it is more convenient, you can count from backwards. So -1 means basically it's the last item. And this is the -2, second last item. So you can have -2, or can you also have 2? How about this? Cannondale, right? You'll be -3. Okay, it's the same thing as +1. So this is how you do the indexing of this. And once you get the index, you get the result, then it becomes an object. You can do whatever you want, just like what we did earlier. You can just treat it as a variable, but you can directly, basically Python can be a chain of functions. So you can put all the things together without having to write multiple lines. So here, I can maybe, let me write this one here. I can say, okay, select it equal to bicycle.1, right? And then I can print out this one. I want to do, for example, change this one to uppercase, okay? Upper, and then so here basically we have two operations, but you don't actually have to separate them. I can just simply come back to here, push in here. You can do on and on. So here I can also maybe change this one to maybe title case, right? Just for demo, there's no point of like uppercase and then to the title, but you certainly can see you can have dot all the way, right? And also here, if I try this one, if I select 1, what do you think? Will it work? What does this mean? Looks quite complicated. Oh, it's like A. Oh, why it's getting A here? Alright, so we're getting the bicycle, right? Cannondale, and then we're uppercase, we title case, and that becomes a string. A string actually is a list. A string is a list, implicit. And here we're trying to do the string indexing, right? So think about here, we're trying to get the index 1, so that means it's the second character. So you're going to get here, you're going to grab this one. How do I get E based on this line of code? How do I get this character? Of course you can read, right? You know it's E, but on program you need to tell like where to look for that one. You cannot hard code it. What's this number should be? Negative 1. Great. Right, you're getting E. You can have negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. This is how you simply do the indexing. Again, starting from 0 and then 1 all the way. Your index cannot be larger than the length, okay, of characters. So if you have 4 items, your index cannot be larger than 3. It cannot be 4, okay. So if you're trying to, for example, the bicycle here, let's do this one again. Try to print out index 4. You're going to say the index, least index out of range, okay? Because you have 4 items, the index is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, done. You cannot have 4. You're going to run into error. Or you can have negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. In that case, it's fine. So it's up to you how you're going to use, but you need to make sure that you don't trying to index over than the maximum number of items that you have. And next one about adding items, removing items. This is also very common. So if you're using Python, most likely you're going to use this very frequently. So you're going to dealing with a list. So for example, right now I have all of you in here. I'm trying to do the grading. Okay, once you finish grading, I can put you into another list, put in another list, put in another list. Then I can figure out like who hasn't finished that yet. And in a small classroom, it's pretty simple, easy. But if you think about like the university is sending out emails to students trying to fill out a survey, and let's assume like here we have 10,000 students, right? They're gonna put your email in a list, and then whoever fill out, it's gonna automatically push you to another list. Then I can just follow up with those that haven't filled out the survey. Okay, so there are a lot of user cases that you will need to use a list to make your things more efficient. So here, assume we have a list of 3 items in here, and then we can index using 0, 1, 2, right? If you want to add an item, use the function called append. Append means you're going to add an item to the end of the list, so it's going to automatically expand the list. Think about in Python, it's essentially what it's doing is creating something in the memory, and then if you're trying to add an item, it's going to append that one to the memory, but the memory might not be necessarily in the same block. It might have the pointer pointing to the next one. So we don't deal with the low level, like how the data being stored in the memory, but this is very important. You can append a list, you can remove something from a list, or you can subdivide the list into 2 lists if you want to. So append is the function that's going to be very useful, right? And if I print out this again, look at this. It's going to append to the list. And also keep in mind, when you append something to the list, it's going to modify your list directly. So if you want to don't want to accidentally change something, you need to create a new list or copy the list, because this is going to change your content. If your list is messed up, your data is gone. Okay, so you need to be careful about that. This can be changed, and you can append multiple times. So for example, here I can create an empty list. So empty list just like square brackets. Done. So this is actually a list, and then I'm going to append 3 items into the list. Then I print out. Okay, just like that. So empty list or curly brackets or a square brackets. So here I'm gonna show you just to like what's the difference is. Okay. What I'm doing here, look at this. Parentheses, square brackets, curly brackets. So those all represent different data types in Python. Parentheses is so-called tuple. We covered it later in the next lecture. And this one is called square brackets. This is the list. How about this one? What's the data type? It's so-called a dictionary. Okay, we also covered it here in lecture notebook number 6. Okay, so just want to let you know you can create an empty one and you can modify the content. So think about it's a placeholder. When you have a content, you can just fill in the content to do that. So next, insert a list besides append. Append always go to the end. So basically it's just like a queue, and then you put that into the queue. You can, if you want to change the order, you can use the insert function. So the insert function provide 2 parameters. Again, let me show you this one here. Just want to make sure that you understand, right? So whenever you're writing something in Python, so I can just motorcycle dot append, right? Pretty cool. And then within there, if I maybe insert, okay. If you look at here, I'm using like GitHub Copilot, so it's automatically show me like what it's accepted. So here, if you need to see the content, hover your mouse over the function, and on the top here, it's going to show you the so-called parameters. So this is where like each function, because each function is going to have arguments. You don't have to have all the arguments, but you can be 0, it can be 1 or 2. And this is where you get the so-called help documentation, because sometimes you have no idea like what kind of things should I provide, like which one is first, which one is second. If you have no idea, hover your mouse, it's going to show you, okay, index and also the object. And then this is helpful because you know, for example, the index. So the first one will be insert 0, basically the index of the list. So you're going to insert this one. So you put 0, right? It's going to start from the beginning, and it's going to insert here. You can also have 1, 2, whatever, right? So for this function, you need to provide 2 parameters. The first one is index, where you want to put the content. The second parameter is the content for that index you want to put. So insert, append, and there's also remove, also called pop. And look at this one. Alright, we have a list of 3 items in here. We print out, and if you need to delete an item, it's called del. Okay, del means delete. Del is a reserved keyword in Python that allow you to delete anything. Okay, you can delete anything. What I'm saying is that you can delete a variable, you can delete content, you can delete a bunch of things. So let me show you here. Let's define this variable, for example. Right. So now I can, once it's defined, I can say print out motorcycle. Oops. Right. It works just fine. So take a look at here. If I delete motorcycle, and then what does this really mean is that it clears things from the memory. So now you can no longer use this one. It's gone. Delete means you can delete an object, delete a variable, delete anything from my memory. So basically just erase you from the earth. You no longer exist, because once you clear out the memory, Python cannot recognize you. So if you have a large object, sometimes just like you're opening the file and then your computer is crashing, you remove the computer, everything works fine because it clear all the memory. So memory is basically just a temporary storage space, allow you to put stuff. And for example, have 16 gig of memory, 32 gig. The larger your memory, the more you can put in there. So you can use the delete function to delete pretty much anything. Delete a function, delete a variable, delete an object, delete a partially a list item. You can do that. Okay, so just like what we're doing here, we have a list of 3 items. we just delete the first one, the index 0, and then your list will become just 2 items. Okay. You can continue to delete more items if you need it. The next one will be useful is the pop function. So the pop function is the same as the list, but this is useful if you need to, before you delete something, you want to save the content to something else. So this is some, for example, if you're designing a program that allow user to, just like a to-do list, okay, you have a to-do list, and then when you finish, you have a check mark, it's going to move to the other one. So you rather than just delete everything, because you want to have a copy of the things you want to delete before you actually delete it. So the pop function allows you to save the content. It's going to return something, okay, return something to here. So similarly, we have a list, we're going to print out, and then we use the function called pop, something dot pop. Pop is going to pop the last one. So the last item is going to pop out from the list, right? So you have here 3 items. We pop out the last item, and then we grab the item. So basically, you can use it later to do something. Okay. Just like here, I save all your names in a variable. Now I'm trying to do something individually to each of you. So I can ask you, okay, come out, and then I save your name to another list, and then I just pop that out. If you're just using delete, then you cannot get a handle on that object because it's deleted from my memory before you do anything else. So this is why the pop function can be useful if you need to do something with that item. And the pop, by default, if you don't provide anything, it's going to pop from the end of the list. But similar to the insert function, you can provide an index. So you can, for example, here I'm going to pop the first item. Index 0 is going to pop, for example, in this case, it's going to pop Honda. So take a look. If I run this one, right, the first motorcycle I own was a Honda. You can also top like 1. Now you can do the 1. So 2. Okay. Can I do 3? Yes? No? No, you cannot. You have 3 items, your index cannot be larger than 3. Larger than 2, okay? 0, 1, 2, again, the index starts from 0. This is something you need to understand. And besides the pop, you can also use remove. So remove is just going to remove an item from the list. This is basically based on the content. Pop means doesn't care about the content. Pop is basically you need to provide an index. What content it is, Python doesn't care. But the remove function allows you to specify what you want to remove from the text. So here, if I run this one, right, I can remove these specific things that you have. If I change to something like this, if you have instead have a typo, can you do that? You're probably going to run into errors. You're going to say blah, 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 something not in the list. So if you're trying to remove something, make sure it exists in the list so they can remove. If you're trying to remove something that doesn't exist in the list, you're going to run into errors. In here at the last notebook, we're going to show you how you can so-called exception handling. So how do you figure out when something goes wrong? How do you deal with that? It's like you are going to the website and you're trying to type something, or you're trying to email somebody, and then if the email address doesn't exist, you're gonna bounce back to tell you that you're sending to an email address doesn't exist. Okay, so in the programming language, you can do something similar. You can predefine what's going to be, and then if it doesn't exist, you're gonna tell the users, okay, you need to do something else. Okay. And remove something from list, you can also sort the list. So here you can just call the function .sort, S-O-R-T, means you're going to sort the function. So again, it's going to modify the content of the list. So by default, this is what your list look like. After I do the sorting, it become A, B, like AST, right? So you can sort the function alphabetically using the sort function. If you want to reverse, you can also do it like this. So if I run this one, you can provide the sort function, provide the parameters. Again, right? I hover my mouse under the sort function, and you want to see here, it has the key, it has the reverse parameters, Boolean by default is false, right? So if you want to do the reverse, you can set the reverse equal to true, then it's going to have something like this. So now you can reverse the order. This is essentially the same like you are using an Excel file, right? You open and then select the column and then you go to like data tab and then sort or something. In programming languages, you have to write something to actually to execute that. So this is how you can do that pretty easily. And the last one here, as I mentioned, the sort function is going to modify your content. So it's going to temporarily change the content. If you don't want to, you can use this function called sorted. Okay, it's a bit confusing here. The sort function here is a function of the object, but the sorted function is not. It's just a function. It's not. You don't use dot something like sorted. It's a function and then put the variable name within the function. So these are the two different ways, right? So in here, you either use this one or you use this one. So this one, dot sort, is going to change the content. Sorted doesn't. Your original will still be original. It's just create a copy and then sort the stuff. You can generate a new list. Okay. So you can use these two. If you don't want to, if you want to preserve the content, you use the sorted. Is it mine? No. Okay. Last function is called length, len. So len will be useful if you need to figure out how many items. Again, if you see from this list, you know it's like 4 items. Again, that's not the point. Okay, programming, when you're doing programming, you don't want to do hard coding. You want to figure out the number of items automatically. So we show you more example how to actually like what kind of user cases like this, but you always want to have function automatically figure out the item. So the len tells you how many items it has. So if you add another one here, right, it's going to put single double quotes like this. Okay, so you can figure out how many items in the list automatically. And the last couple ones, indexing error, we have covered it earlier. Basically, depends on how many items you have, the index cannot be larger than, so basically always smaller than the length. So if you have 4 items, your index should be 0 to 3. You have 5 items, the index will be from 0 to 4. You can have multiple. So just make sure that you, when you're doing the indexing, pay attention to the number of items in there. Okay, so that's pretty much what we want to cover. And so in the next lecture, we're going to go through how you can do more like slicing and also do the looping, because this is essentially why programming is so powerful, because it can automatically loop through the items and then do something to the item automatically. So in that way, it's just a couple lines of code rather than you have to manually do that many times. Okay, so that's all for today. Any questions? If not, I'll see you on Thursday. And again, make sure you practice, read the text, run the call, and welcome to practice other notebooks. So for next lecture, we cover more about these and also conditional statements. Okay, see you on Thursday.